Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It's great to see you. I have not been in this setting for a while. This is an at-home day. I figured I'd go into the studio later to do some stuff, but we are doing sort of a conclusion episode today on the amazing and enormous collection of rugs in Cape Ann at a house called Beauport, the Sleeper McCann house, that is truly overflowing with old rugs that are super folk arty, collectible, really sort of important rugs. Um, and we didn't get to them all on Friday night when we did our cocktail night. So I thought, let's do this today. Let's look at the rest of these rugs that are here and talk about them so that we all have a chance to see all of them in case you're not in this part of the country and you can't just go over to that house and check out that collection of rugs. It really is astonishing. So good morning to everybody. Karen, good morning. Great to see you. You're dyeing wool yarn this morning while you watch. Fantastic. I'm doing the same thing in just a minute. I've got a pile of these in front of me. I'm counting 23, 24, 25. And it's less hot today than it has been for a while. So I guess it's the right day to do it. Just adding any heat at this point is really a deterrent, right? But these things must get done. Happy dyeing to you too. Doreen, great to see you. Kirsten, great to see you. Beautiful weather there today. Yeah, there was a bit of like a snap change, wasn't there? And it came down a few degrees yesterday, which was funny because yesterday was the day that I decided to drive out with the kids on an adventure. And we ended up going to this little town called Winstead, which I really love because it's one of these old Connecticut towns that was at one time this thriving mill on this river called the Mad River, M-A-D. Really beautiful main street with lots of antique stores, some of which are still open. It's a little bit sort of on the junky side, but the land is absolutely beautiful around it. And the exceptional thing about it is that the roads go very, very, very steep. In fact, Teddy was in the passenger seat and he was holding onto the dashboard because he was so nervous that the road was quite steep for Connecticut. And I could feel the gravel under the tires was quite loose, which, you know, creates tension. But we made it up there, and at the top of this hill, it must be a hill, is this beautiful lake called Highland Lake. And it was just beautiful. We were the only people there for a while, just me and the kids swimming and floating, and it was so nice. And there's this beautiful natural spring right next to it where we filled up all of our big thermoses and things. It was just so nice, you know, one of those like stolen days that I didn't have a plan and you just take off and hope for the best, and it turns out to be just really beautiful and memorable. And it was cold. That's the point. It was the first day in so long. I thought, oh, what a relief it will be to jump into the lake, but it was actually quite cold yesterday. It was like in the low 70s, and I was terribly cold when we got out of the water. You know, and it was just a bit ironic, a bit of Murphy playing. That after so many days of sweating it up, finally we're at this place where we can really enjoy getting cold and wet and then warming up again. And it wasn't the right day for it. That's okay. It was super, super fun. Crystal, great to see you in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Crystal, I saw that there is a folk art festival in Nova Scotia this Sunday. I saw it on Laura Kenny's page. Isn't that right, Laura Kenny? All of the Judys, and I was super jealous because apparently she's putting some of her work for sale at the fair, and yeah, all of her sort of selling places are not in the U.S., and it looked like, I clicked on the link for the festival, it looked amazing. I was wondering if you were going. Exciting. Beverly, great to see you. You're there at the beach. Oh, it's drizzling rain. Yeah, it's definitely cooling off for the moment, right? Jersey girl is there. Linda, great to see you. And Linda H. in Massachusetts, great to see you. Courtney, good morning. Good to see you. And Jane in Wales, great to see everybody. Cindy, Shannon, all of the buddies are on today. Great to see you. Lynn, good morning. I'm a bit better today. It was nice having that day. And we happened to find one of these old-time arcades, too, which the kids really love. With some of these like prize, you know, claw type things, and it looked like the toys had been in there since the 80s, which is just what we like. It was really just a wacky day, like a Stephen King kind of a day, you know, more like a Ray Bradbury, Something Wicked This Way Comes kind of a finding things day. Oh, good to see everybody. Annette, great to see you. Good morning. Hot and humid in Tennessee. And Barbara, great to see you. Joy, good morning. Ryan, good morning. Beating the heat in North Texas, I bet. Oh, Lisa, great to see you too. Lisa, I'm sending in that form. We have a bunch of events coming up in the fall. I'll start putting those down and I'll start finding a place for them both on our Facebook group, which is Rug Cooking and Punch Needle Club, and on the Ribbon Candy Hooking page for those of you who don't use Facebook. I'm also going to start trying to remind myself to post more often on both Reddit, Instagram, and some of the other sites because I know different people like different things. I don't really like anything that involves the computer. I like coming here and knowing how to press the buttons, but I'm going to try to start doing that more. Good morning, Joyce in Pennsylvania, because I want to be I want to be short transition that we all know what events are going on near us, and we all know what buddies are near us, and what hook-ins are happening, and what festivals are happening. Particularly, at least in this part of the country, as we move to fall, we've got all these fall festivals with possible hook-in combos and things like that. So. Brian says, where do we send images for gallery night? That's a great question. Ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com would be great. I can't wait to get yours, and I will put them in the show. So on Friday, I am going to run that Raya Rugs night. We'll talk about that in just a minute, and then I'm going to be projecting to gallery night. So that is my plan. But for the moment, let's go back into the screen show. I had to redo the screen show because of technical problems with my middleman program. That was super fun. Thank God it was a good episode of Murder, She Wrote. It was the one with the bus, where they board the bus in this New England sort of night, and of course somebody gets killed on the bus ride. Thank God for that, because otherwise it would have been a harrowing morning. Nancy, good morning. Good to see you. Lisa says, great, I received my confirmation yesterday for the Woolwright event. So there's the Woolwright event that is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Lisa, if you get the chance in the thread, can you put the date for that? And Lisa, when I pulled it up yesterday, it looked like you were supposed to print out the form and fill it in to reserve your spot. Does that sound right to you? Because I want to be sure I do it the quickest way possible and the most foolproof way possible. I'm just wondering if that's how you did it. I forgot to send you a message and ask. Nancy, hello, and Karen, hello, good morning. I'm glad you're catching us live too, Karen. So let's go back to this beautiful house called Beauport, and just to walk you back into it, because we started this episode on Friday night, cocktail night. This is a home that belonged to several different people over time. It was originally like, I want to say an 18th century, could have been earlier, but I think it was an 18th century home, very, very small, that was kind of changed and parts of it broken off and built onto by David Sleeper, who's considered one of America's first interior designers and Hollywood set designers. And he really used this house, building on room after room and wing after wing with his vast wealth, to kind of experiment with looks that he liked and styles that he liked. He loved folk art, and he was a great collector. So the kinds of things that he liked to build and collect are things that I think we like too. And one of those things was hooked rugs. So he has a huge, huge collection of hooked rugs. In some rooms, there were honestly a dozen or more rugs just scattered on the floor. So we started looking at these on Friday night, and I truly ran out of time. So let me come back to you. Oh, Chrissy, good morning. Good to see you. And Lisa replied that the Woolwright's Hook-In in Lancaster, Pennsylvania is October 14th through 16. And you say, yes, fill out the form with your check mail. So this is a mail thing. I just wanted to be sure that that was the case. I will, let's say on Friday, I'll try to synthesize all of the events that are coming up in the near future, the next like 3 months, and give you as many as I know. And then if you find gaps in the list that I have so far, please let me know so I can spread the word and we all know where the good stuff is happening. So back to our scene. Let me bring you down to where we left off, I believe, on Friday. So I think we left off in this room, which is like the Japan room. And I remember saying this room is shaped like an octagon. No, a pentagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A pentagon. So feels like a round room. You go in there and the walls are painted black, like truly the color black. And there is so much sort of light bamboo colored stuff in there, sort of teak stuff, red Japanois type stuff, right? Like the red lacquer, lipstick red stuff. And also a lot of aubergine stuff, not necessarily in this photo, but I just thought it was a remarkable color palette because we had a lot of um, dark colored paint, black aubergine, that bright lipstick red, and a lot of quite light furniture. And that color palette was absolutely beautiful. Unexpected rug appeared in this room. I don't know if you can see it peeking out from under the table. I'm going to bring you a little bit closer into it. But it was for a room that was kind of this artsy, because if you can imagine the 1920s, 1930s, all things Japanese were quite popular and chic, the height of sophistication. And it is a bit of an anomaly that Sleeper would choose to put under this really statement table set a hooked rug that is quite old and based on a quilt pattern. So it was hard to get a picture of it, but I got down there as best I could, and it is an older 19th century rug. It is like, I want to say, like a Lone Star pattern. Am I right there? The kind of feather pattern with all the diamonds coming out of the central star. My mind's blanking out on that. This is not a good photo, but I was, again, down on my hands and knees, and the crowd had already left the room. I was feeling my hands shaking. I was so stressed about getting photos. But you can see that the shape of the rug mimics the shape of the table and the shape of the room. You can also catch a glimpse in this rug of all the other hooked rugs that are scattered around. Those are all hooked rugs in the distance. But I thought, how interesting, and what a juxtaposition to put that kind of an old-timey folk rug in with a very fashionable like dining room set. Now, this, I had to show you this, although there's no hooked rugs in this picture. This is probably, of the rooms in the house, from what the tour guide was saying, there are 2 or 3 that are considered like the favorites, and this is certainly one of them. This was another dining room that you kind of breezed through, and on your right, a wall of sort of diamond paned windows that look out over the harbor. The water is immediately there. It's a drop down to the water. But I thought, what a beautiful looking room. There's 2 long tables. And if you notice, the table on the right hand side have all of those sort of pistachio colored chairs, mint colored chairs pushed up to it, but there are no chairs on the other side. It's a one-sided view. And the reason for that is because that whole wall of windows opens up on a pulley, like you're pulling up blinds, except you're pulling up all the windows. Imagine in these days the room filled with artists and collectors and friends, all local, all neighbors, pulling up that pulley thing and getting this wall to recede into like a pocket above it and opening up that space, letting the ocean air come in. It must have just been amazing. Beverly says, Lemoyne star pattern? Lemoyne star, is that right? Sounds good. I'm going to go with it. I'm not familiar with that word or term at all, but I'm sure you know. I defer to you for everything, as you know. Karen said, Monet had a lot of Japanese art at Giverny. Yeah, it was such a big thing in the late Victorian period and early 20th century. It was one of these trends, like the love of Japanese art, you know, that it kind of started in the Victorian period with trading and things like that. And people got very interested in Japanese prints, woodcut kind of prints, patterns on textiles, and it sort of evolved. And it really took root in wealthier homes, right, in society circles, and then people looking in are a decade or 2 or 3 behind because they're aware of this trend. They also can see into department store windows, right? That sort of era of Selfridge, right, if you watch that series. So you can see what the trends are, but for the average person, they would be far behind the trend. So the trend and the passion for sort of Asian art in general carries us right through into the 20th century. And in the 20s and 30s, it dovetails really well with the Art Deco period. Because of the clean lines. Are you okay, Ted? Okay, I am doing a show in here. The coughing is okay. It's just no words. So it is interesting to see the kind of art that he would have had in here. Because if you remember, the heiress, the Woolworth heiress, the daughter, bought this house when David Sleeper passed away and kept the contents just the way that they were. So this represents kind of the early 20th century view of the height of sophistication. I just thought this was just a stunning room and so interesting to see how he decorated in such a fashionable style. I mean, he was a tastemaker of that time. This is a view out that window. I just thought it was beautiful, just beautiful. He was the tastemaker of the day, and yet he really had a passion for very old hooked rugs. And he didn't care in terms of aesthetics how that fit in with the rest of his collections. He had them in every room, with the exception of that dining room, and maybe that was because food was coming and going. But he had dozens of them in most of his large rooms, always a few, always at least a spattering. I wasn't sure if we saw this one. I think we did last week. I thought it was so unusual because the scale of that central wreath was so tiny compared to the border. This is one of the ones that I put into a pattern. If you didn't catch Friday's show, I think some of, in my opinion, the best of the best from this house in Cogswell Grant, the other house we looked at on the Friday night episode. I sort of translated what I thought were the best and most unique of the rugs that we're seeing out of hundreds. There's so many more. Into patterns that are in the Ribbon Candy Hooking shop. If you feel like doing a real traditional and paying homage to these very, very old sort of 19th century rugs. I'm pretty sure we saw this one. I just wanted to be sure because I think I remarked on the palette. It isn't my favorite palette at all, but I like the series of borders around the medallion going right out to the edges and that very odd scroll in the corners. We're seeing it on the bottom left. Very odd, very different. Sue's good to see you. Just different. I love these examples of people experimenting with and trying to capture the look of rugs that they have seen without commercial patterns. This is another one that falls into that category. This is in the attic room. It is the same kind of color palette, the browns, but for me, this is not the yellow browns. For my personal taste, I'm not a big yellow person, so yellow and brown together never strike me quite the right way. But this is more heading toward like browns and sage greenies with a lot of pinks and corals. I love this palette. What I really love about this rug, it's not that dissimilar to the rug that we just saw, but very different handling of the corners. While this is a rug that wants to be one of these kinds of high-end floral rugs, you know, like the best people have, it has sort of a scroll floral border, which is pretty traditional. That would be what we're seeing. A hit or miss center, right? Because it is a rag rug after all. But then in the corners, they kind of, for whatever reason, probably just it's an imagination thing or a creative choice, they decided to not go with corners that were much more in keeping with this sort of high-end rug. And instead, they went with really folky corners and just did a kind of scallop or lamb's tongue from the corner as far as they could out to meet the border, right? The florid border on it. I thought interesting because we are seeing a clash of worlds. If you were to just look at the four corners of this rug, you would say, oh, that's very primitive. That's a very traditional folk rug. But then when you see the motif in the center, it's like, well, they really were going for that floral spray with the feeling of a scroll border. So interesting that they would put these two things together. I can't think of another example where we see this kind of collision of motifs and styles, two different feels in one rug. But it did make me think, why not? I mean, always, why not? But you know, when you're designing or you're completing a commercial pattern that you've been working on, and you feel like you're struggling when you get to the border and the corners, this is just a reminder for all of us. I think this is very successful. That you can, even if you have hitherto been really careful about shading and doing a real traditional floral, you can change your mind at the border or on the corners and say, you know what, we're going folky now. We're mixing it up. It's going to be a mashup rug. Because when I see these together, it's jarring for a second, and then I think, you know what, that is quite beautiful. And you could go even further with it. I would be tempted, probably the center was complete, but I would be tempted to bring those corner motifs right in closer, right up into that central field. But I just thought it was very cool. And you notice that from corner to corner, the color striping is different. I thought that was interesting too. I thought it was all interesting. Another view of the same rug. You see just how hit or miss it is. Even the scrolling that they're doing is done in hit or miss. So I think the center is where they kind of saved their fire for shading and using specific colors. And then as soon as they completed that part, it was kind of like a hit or miss fest everywhere. And I just love that. I just absolutely love the way it looks. One more of the same rug. I'm looking at the veining in the scroll at the bottom, and I'm looking at the way they put that kind of jagged, kind of sawtooth zigzag on those corner motifs. It really has something, doesn't it? I mean, for me, this really grabs you because it doesn't look like any one style. It's such a sort of mutant, right? It's like so many, it's a fusion of several styles. And that real attempt in that center field with the hit or miss to do something kind of cohesive, a little bit geometric, a little bit bling bling, but just with the very neutral browns, khakis, grays, whites that they had. It is beautiful, Courtney, isn't it? It's really something different, something to think about. Now, I think we went into this room a little bit on Friday night, and this is the room before I ended, I think, because I'm pretty sure we looked at that rug, but I'm not positive. And as I'm not positive, look at this view out these windows. I mean, how crazy is this? Remember, he took a lot of architectural stuff, windows, pelmets, columns, fireplaces, doorways from other houses that were falling down in the countryside. He just tooled around the countryside, leisurely man, and found houses that were dilapidated and bought them to sort of rescue and salvage the architectural stuff that was going on inside of them that he thought was really interesting and special. This is that rug. I don't think we saw this one actually. This is in my top 3 for sure in these houses. And something about it, it's one of these speak to me rugs. This is certainly a hearth rug because of its proportion. It's laying down to the left of a bed. I tipped the photo so we had a bigger view of it. Some of these angles, I couldn't get any closer to it without stepping on it, and I didn't want to. So I was really sort of trying to take a picture at an odd angle, but there's a bed on the right and 2 chairs on the left, like club chairs. And I just love how full and lush this center is with these different flowers, and how there seems to be a black background, but then there also seems to be a mustard background or antique gold. I love the mix of colors and how bright the colors still are. I would put this at a late 19th century rug. I love, and it could be fading, but I don't know because there doesn't seem to be a lot of fading happening in other parts of the rug. I'm looking at the choices of colors for the leaves, and it's more like grays and sage green. They're really neutrals. A little bit of sort of olive green and even copper. Very unusual. They did have some green for leaves, and you can see they use that in the center. But when they get out to that silhouette border, it's more gray and sage green. So I think they were really color planning, consciously, actively, panickingly color planning this one, wondering what they were going to run out of and how far they could go with their colors. That whole red border, right, that tweedy border is obviously a piece of clothing, probably a coat or a very large, like Victorian skirt, because there's lots of it. It doesn't have to be wool, it could be cotton. I don't think I got down low enough to check. We moved so fast in this house because it had like dozens, it had like over 100 rooms. But that is certainly a patterned wool, and I thought that was so neat. And then these weird kind of ethnic symbols they put on the 4 corners where that rug board, where the red border is, really interesting because they are kind of Eastern looking motifs, possibly Native American motifs, but they do have a sort of ethnic feel to them, which again is in high contrast to these big fat flowers. Interesting. And then it looks to me like the outer border is army green. And of course, when I see army green with a rug this age, I'm thinking military blanket or military uniform, because why not? They had it, right? So why wouldn't they use it? I just think this is an extraordinary rug. I thought I might have another picture of it, but this is one we saw on Friday for sure. And I just wanted to show it one more time because you can see that it is somewhat similar in palette and design to the one we were just looking at. I love this one and prefer this one just because of the unexpected touches and choices in it. This one is gorgeous, though. We talked about this as being in the style of an Edward Sands Frost, and indeed it might be an Edward Sands Frost. But the scrolling in this is so beautiful. Actually, I might like this one even more. The marbly background and all those different colors of army, very similar feel, very similar palette, but you can see how different directions you can go in with a very similar pattern and very similar colors. And here is the third to boot, right? I don't think we saw this one yet. This one definitely is getting ready for repairs, I hope. But I suspect that this is a commercial pattern, and I would guess that this is a Garrett Bluenose pattern or a Frost pattern because it's that age. It's another 19th century. It's got a lot of loss in places, as you can see. People have been walking on these rugs, including the original owner and whoever owned it before him. So during his day, people were driving around in their brand new automobiles, as he was, and looking for places traveling up the New England coast, looking for places where people were set out with hooked rugs that they were making or antique hooked rugs. And collectors were going nuts at this point. It was just like a crazy free-for-all for the upper class who were collecting rugs. Just finding these people sitting there and being able to pick up old and new ones for collections must have been such a moment in time. We do that now, but it's like slim pickings, like even at the best of times and the best of locations. But this is a much sort of older rug and beautifully done. Lots of red. I'm guessing a lot of dyeing happening here originally. Very small white field, which works beautifully, very effective. And some really bright white in the center with these flowers. I took a close-up of those flowers because the person who made it also speckled out the flowers with shadows. So this is a graphic attempt. Attempt is the wrong word. A graphic handling of shading. This is Pearl McGowan, all certified teacher moments. This is folk arting it, figuring it out as you go along. And the most obvious way to attack flowers that had color changes that were magical and you wanted to capture them would be to do it quite graphically, because you didn't have like 16 colors of pink to play with. You had whatever you had in your bag, and you hoped that you could make a few flowers with those colors. So you can see the really creative and thoughtful way that these flowers are picked out color-wise, particularly the trumpet flower on the bottom right. Very graphic with a lot of white outlining. They were so careful to try not to lose the shapes of the flowers. There's a lot going on with the leaves, too, in this rug. Split right down the middle, some of them. Half of them being kind of like a vegetable sort of maroony color, and the other half being very leafy, fresh green, spring green. So interesting just studying flowers like this. I mean, it would be wonderful in strawberries. It'd be wonderful to just be able to stand here for a good long time and bring lunch or, you know, a cocktail and just stare at it and make comments together and say, oh, isn't that interesting? Because your eye goes to all these different places and different people see different things. But this is like a study in how to make it work, 19th century style, when you don't have unlimited colors and you get what you get and you don't get upset and you try to do the mileage with it and get there to a beautiful composition that looks very ornate. This person has certainly done that, and even had that feeling on what are probably some kind of lily to put those dit dots, right, those speckles in there. I think that is so different. And the fact that they color changed them just shows such a, sort of an advanced ideal of what the finished product should look like. I think this rug is exceptional. This is another one of the ones I think that's in the same room. It's like he did try to put like rugs together. This has bias binding on it. We saw the tape loom in Friday night's episode. Because when we see these early rugs and we know that they're early rugs and they have this tape just like the tape we use today, sometimes we go, how did that happen? Somebody must have recently bound it. Now that is possible that it was recently bound, but we know from those 19th century tape looms that people made their own tape, and it came out looking just like the tape that we use today, except a factory makes it, thank God, for us today. This is another beautiful scroll rug with the maker having some very classic and beloved situation of running out of so many colors at once and having to chop it up. And it's always interesting to see how this person did chop it up, because sometimes you get that marble cake that is super subtle, and sometimes you get this just straight commitment to horizontals, all this directional hooking, and sometimes you get something like this where the person just squares off sections and just goes as long as they can with one color and then goes to the next color. And you know, these are all great, equal, wonderful, and interesting ways to tackle a background where you know you don't have enough material to run the whole thing in one color. But you can see that they tried to shore up the central flower design and then those two side designs. They definitely shored up the scrolls and kept that light edging on them so that they did not get lost. And they must have had some sort of ingrained instinct that said to them, if I secure the three motifs and the scroll, then whatever happens after that in terms of running out of colors and just having to keep going will still work. And if that was their thinking, it was absolutely right. And if that was not their thinking and they just went ahead and did it, it worked great. This is just what you want to see, Lynn. Isn't that great? It is so beautiful. When you're a collector and you like this age of rug, right, you're not trying to collect the greatest hits of now, but much earlier rugs that are quite valuable, this is just what you want to see. You want to see a color palette that still has some poignancy, that's still a bit bright, that has some relationship to what the original colors would be on the front where you would display it. And you want to see elements of the way that that unique person worked. So because everybody works differently, this really is quite different, the handling of the background. You want something like this because in your collection of medallion rugs with scrolls, as a collector, not many of them are going to have a background that looks like this. It is brave, it's different. This is a very valuable rug. Of course, it's not for sale. Whitney, good to see you. Getting ready to head out on our church camping trip. Oh, how fun is that? Oh, me too, Whitney. You're going to have a great time. That sounds like a lot of fun. Lot of fun. You know, in this house, there were a few of these little half moon rugs, and I thought, why not take a picture of them too? They weren't the standouts, certainly, but they are thrifty little rugs that serve their purpose at thresholds. This is just a nice geometric, no pattern, just go for it kind of a thing. A cutie, and this is another little cutie. Half Moon says, welcome. This looks like a newer rug to me. I think this is certainly a 20th century rug. I would think a 40s, 50s era rug. So it could be that this was not original to the house. I don't see this as being an earlier rug, though. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure. It is a curious rug. I like the three flowers. That shows good design sense. And, well, I mean, not that it has to be that way, but we are always told to do things in odd numbers. Once we start seeing a lot of commercial patterns in the 20th century, we start seeing designs like this that are very careful to do things symmetrically and with the odd numbered flowers. So this really feels to me like, you know, if I had to put a year on it, I would say 1930, right in the middle, right between 20 and 40. I think it's a little older than the 1940s. The colors are a bit 40s, but you know, that red was also present 1920s, 1930s designs too. So I would put it right in there. It might have been a new rug when David Sleeper got it and put it into the house. It might be that somebody made it for him. You never know. It might be that in one of his drives, this was a new rug that he picked up on the side of the road and thought, yeah, I think I'll have that. Nicole, great to see you in North Carolina. Glad you're there. You know, one of the interesting things about this rug, too, is that on one side of the spray, there are berries or rosebuds, and on the other, it's either a different pattern or they just colored it differently. I think they did color it differently. You see on the left how that spray has purple flowers, like the big purple flower on the left, and the spray on the right, yeah, I think that's what this person did, has red buds like the red flower, and then up top there's only one or two buds, but they seem to be yellow, relating to the yellow flower. So that is interesting. I didn't notice that before. I just thought they must have been running out of colors like crazy. It looks like they did do something thoughtful and try to give the appropriate color, the spray, the same color as like the mother flower for this. But even these small rugs were quite interesting. That's probably why he wanted it, right? Here's my little mom upstairs in the attic room. We had a quick glimpse of the attic room. We're going to have another glimpse of it. It was so beautiful up there. I'm going to show you something neat that happened up there, not this past year, but a few years ago. This is one of those doorways I was telling you about where he would go to a house that was falling down and literally take like a wall out or an entire room out. This was one of those instances. This is the front door of a house that he found that was falling down. And he had men come and remove the entire door. So this would have been an outer door. And thank God he did because it's salvaged. So this is like a 17th century home. And he managed to save this beautiful, important front door with the spiderweb window over it, the transom. I mean, it's just gorgeous and ornate. It's up there in the attic. He has quite a bit of this going on throughout the house. And again, this house is in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Stuff like this, too, just gave me such a feeling of cohesiveness. In a home with so many rugs and so much folk art, stuff like this, like an old, I don't know if anybody's done this yet, but I'm dying to try this old craft of punching tin. So just getting a piece of tin, it looks like they rolled the top and bottom like a barrel type of a shade, but then they had some kind of a little cutting stamp that was able to punch through the tin and make this perforated pattern. I don't know a lot about this craft, but I'm going to look for a class or some online help to figure out how to do this, because to me this is just such a good complement to our rugs and to folk art collections. I thought it was just a little side touch that was so pretty. And I don't know if you noticed, but in this house, you see the background there? He's got a lot going on with little recesses. So I'm sure the walls were insulated and things like that. And sometimes he had windows that didn't feed outside but fed to the roof. I mentioned that on Friday. So that natural sunlight would come through and light up the back of some of his displays. So he often had a gap in the wall. And sometimes with that gap in the wall, he just left the gap and put up rungs from like an old stairway or an old piece of furniture, where he could then use the spot as a shelf, as a little shadow box to display other collections that he had. I thought in terms of decorating, as he was a decorator, it was just so interesting. Now, this is certainly the most important rug that's in the house. This is a reproduction. So this is what I was kind of building up to. Sorry, just swallowing. This is called the Magic Rug, and this is a copy of a Hutchinson rug. And I know we've talked about the Hutchinsons before, so I'm not going to go there too much today because I've got a lot more to show you. But this was an important rug, and I was lucky enough to be there while it was being restored. Not restored, remade. It was a little bit beyond restoring it. So the whole thing was remade to put down again. But it is an exact replica. So this is a Hutchinson rug. It's got a lot of text on it. You see there's like a little Cupid character appearing on the right-hand side behind this red curtain that is very faded, and holding a pair of Victorian boots. Hey, Sherry. Hello in Oklahoma. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you're there. Good to see you. I'm trying to read the text on this, and I know I'm not going to be able to. We'll have to look at it another time when we do another Hutchinson episode. But I was very lucky to be there when Happy DeFranza, right? And if you are a rug hooker and you've been a rug hooker for a while, you know this name because she's one of the icons of rug hooking. She was there. This is her in person, and she's showing the process of transferring her drawing taken carefully from the original Hutchinson rug that is on the table, and how she had transferred it. I don't have a lot of steps of the process, onto backing and was hooking it while we were there. So the day that we were there, this was right before COVID. So I guess it was early spring 2020 or possibly fall 2019. But this is, I think, the original rug on the floor. And she was in this room that we're in right now with our tour from a week and a half ago. Oh, hi, Nada. Good to see you. Still morning in San Francisco. Oh, good to see you. This is the attic room, and it just reminded me of, being there and watching Happy restore the rug, remake the rug. But it was a wonderful day. I was there with a group of other rug hookers, one of the ATHA chapters in southern Massachusetts. And what was I going to say? She was telling us in such detail about how it was such a process trying to figure out that fine line between, am I remaking it in the original colors, right? Or am I remaking it to look like an antique rug that's actually the age that it is? Am I trying to remake it to look like the rug that has been sitting here for a while and has now had it and now it needs to be rescued and replaced with a replica? And from what she was saying, it sounded like she decided to keep the colors as matched as possible to the rug that currently existed, with a little pop above, like a little bit brighter, so there was room to mellow again, but not the original colors. She didn't want it to be jarring, in a house with a huge collection of antique rugs. She didn't want it to be like, oh my God, this one's new. So she was very thoughtful about the way that she approached it, and I think she was super successful in what she did, of course. She's an absolute pro. So this is all up in the attic room. The attic room is completely changed out now. Um, I think this is the original rug. I took a picture of this from then. I think there's a little, oh, I thought that was a nitty nutty. I guess that's a chair near it. So she'd already copied this pattern and was just referring to it, and they put it down for us to be able to take photos of it. Thank goodness. So back to our tour this past month, well, this month, and looking at a few more rugs. I'm sure if you watched Friday, you remember my saying that there were a lot of rugs that were based on quilt patterns, star patterns, a lot of star patterns, step patterns, a lot of geometrics. And geometrics, we know from reading contemporary books, were usually used in the kitchen and in the bedrooms, in the bathrooms. They were not typically used at all in rooms where you would be entertaining company, because they wanted fancier designs in those rooms that were more akin to the kind of expensive imported rugs that you would like to think that you could get, or you would like your neighbors to think that you could get. So these kinds of designs would be reserved for parts of the house where the family did not entertain. These are my favorites, I have to say. I just love these old geometrics. I took some close-ups of them so you could see the colors that were going on. Geometrics are a great opportunity to use your hit or miss stuff, like all your leftover worms or yarns, because you know that if you run out of colors, it really is not the end of the world. Zentangles, absolutely, Karen, absolutely. It's just fun to just keep going. You don't have to agonize and pull stuff out. You don't have to beat yourself up if things don't go right. You just keep going. This is a great example of a hit or miss. That is an original pattern. I love this rug. It's not my favorite in terms of like if I could pick one, I'd take it. But I have to say, I think that this is the most extraordinary rug that's in that house. This is a 19th century geometric / pictorial hit or miss rug. I've never seen anything like this. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. Somebody has broken down the center to have all of these pretty even rectangles, and in each one, I mean, there must have been a real thing happening with not enough colors of any one color. They were so careful to make small compartments. This is like a welcome mat sized rug, maybe a little bit bigger, but they were so careful to try to make each compartment a standalone visual. And some of them very, very graphic. Some of them with it, like there's an anchor in the bottom, the sort of middle bottom left. There are lots of leaves. There are lots of geometrics. There are some crosses, right? So it could be that it represents a family, things and symbols and motifs that related to the members of the family. I'm sure I took another close-up of it. I've just never seen anything like this. And looking at it from back to front, there's not a lot of color loss. So wherever this was, it was in a place where it was quite safe. This is just a crazy rug. It was so crazy that I had to make a pattern of it, right? So this is exactly it, square to square. Ribbon candy hooking. It's on the Ribbon Candy Hooking site. Oh, hi, Glenda. Good to see you from South Carolina. Great to see you. I just thought it was an interesting one to replicate because it's in that house. It doesn't tour. It's part of the house. It's not like it'll be traveling and you'll see it close to you. I think everybody who rug hooks should see this rug because it really is a sampler. It's the closest rug I've seen to being the idea of a crazy quilt, but for rug hookers, right? Because we don't do well with diagonals and things with our medium. We do okay. I love it too, Crystal, right? It's just crazy. You could do it in any color palette, right? This is sort of fabric and clothing that would have been common in that day. But in our day, you could do it in any color palette. I mean, it could be very, very different. I just thought it was extraordinary. In some of the squares, very few of them, you can see from my drawing, are blank. But what an undertaking. And what a thing for someone like me who is, mentally unstable. I'm going to say it. Like, it's fun to go block by block because you go, okay, let's do the anchor. Good, anchor's done. Let's do a circle. Circle's done. Let's do a moon and stars. Good, done. It gives you this great feeling of satisfaction, completing such small compartments as you go. Just really fun. Really fun. Something different, right? Let me make sure we didn't miss a, nope. So then we walked out onto the porch and it overlooks the water. Here's my mom again and Carol's in the background. This was such, this was one of those spaces that you go, you know that feeling where you walk somewhere and you feel like you've been there before and you know that you haven't. For me, that I had that so strong when I walked out onto the porch of this house the first time I went. It was so strong. I almost had to sit down, but you're not supposed to. Just a beautiful room. I don't think there were, it's a tiny, narrow room. I had to use a special lens to just get this photo. Look at that beautiful carved, I wish I took a picture of it. There's like a carved woman above the windowsill on the right. Beautiful room. And it had two pieces of art in it that I had to capture to create hooked rugs. And they were not hooked rugs. They were foil, Victorian foil pictures. Impossible to get a picture with the bay reflecting immediately behind me. But you know, foil pictures that people used to do in the Victorian period starting in like the 1840s, where they would actually use like metallic foil or leaf in the background and then reverse glass paint to block out some of it so it looked like there was a glitter shining through. The Victorians loved their bling. This was one of the ones, there were a pair of them. And I mean, I love foil pictures and I have a few, but I don't have any of this caliber in this age. But I thought it's going to be a hooked rug. I called this Foil Fantasy 1. I just loved it so much as a design for a hooked rug. And I might do it in real similar colors. And here comes the second one. And again, if I could have gotten a better photo, but you can see the sea is reflected behind me. I wonder if this is the one. Let me see. This is two birds as opposed to the first one. Yeah, this is the one. The pattern that I drew, you see the squares on the right? They aren't part of the original pattern, but this is me taking a photo of it, and you see the reflection of my arms going up and the reflection of the water in the windows behind it. Well, if you end up hooking this pattern, you obviously don't have to do that, but I loved the way it looked with those windows on the side. So I balanced it out as part of the design. That's optional, but I just thought, what a moment. You know, I didn't put my arms in it, of course. That would have been very confusing. But I thought, great design. I'm gonna do both of them. I might even do them in mini punch. They're up there for rug hookers right now, but if you're interested in doing them in mini punch, let me know because I think I will. And then I can offer them that size on that backing, right, instead of regular rug hooking backing. This is all part of that same room, and it's just a take your breath away kind of room, the attic room. Part of it is where Happy to Friends was doing the magic rug by the Hutchinsons, and the other part is the bedroom part. You can see here this beautiful old Swift clamped to the table. I'm not sure if it's ivory or bone, but it is, or sort of it's scrimshaw. I don't think it's scrimshaw, which would be bone, but it's just beautiful. It was all tied with silk ribbons. It was just gorgeous. And this is another view of the room. And across the way, Brenda is standing right next to the Swift at that little table. But you can see on the left, there is a gorgeous hooked rug in this room that is exceptional. Another golden oldie. I hear someone playing the ukulele. I just want to remind you, hey, that I'm recording. You want to say hi? Wait a minute. Let me come on here. Hold on. There she is. The Pokemon collector of all time. All right. We're going to show little pup too while we're at it. There's Jocelyn, my buddy, and Buttons the dog. Hey, Buttons. There he is. Funny looking thing. So this is the rug that we were looking at the foot of the beds. It's a large rug. It is a partial floral, partial geometric. It is completely unique. Thanks, Glenda. Glenda's saying hi to you, honey. I just loved this one. You know, I love the crossover rugs that are like geometrics and florals. And this certainly is one of the best examples in the room. What is it, baby?
You want some gum?
Okay. Go ahead. I'm going to fall for it. We got this out of the arcade.
You want some gum?
Let me have a piece of gum. Ow.
It's a finger trap.
Yeah, it zaps you with a wire.
And I got a fuzzy thing.
Yes. Okay, go ahead. Show your fuzzy thing. The claw machine was good to us at the arcade yesterday.
Yeah, there's a zipper. It's so fluffy.
It is so fluffy. Yeah. You could probably use it as a face cloth, but then it probably wouldn't last, would it?
Yeah.
She's going to put the gum back in the container so she can zing me again. Future zings. So this one is beautiful geometric. Let me come back to this slide and show you a little bit closer up of it. Crystal. Oh, hi, Sue. Sue's is saying hi to you, too.
Hey.
This is a little bit closer up of this rug. I just love the feel of it. I don't think that could be a flower in every other box, but it also could be like a pomegranate, symbol of fertility, right? Really beautiful, really different. Let me come in even closer if I can. No, that's as close as I got. And then I made a pattern for it in the next slide. But isn't it something? I mean, it just really speaks to me. Again, it's not my colors, and I just really fell for this rug. I love the geometric with the hit or miss center in every other one, mixed with this sort of pomegranate circle shape that could be a flower or could be a circle with this vine that circles around it. So I did a pattern for this one too that looks like this, and it's large. If you're looking for a really large rug, this is one that I put up in ribbon candy hooking, and you see how the way that it's drawn, the leaves kind of circle around an exit, and it creates a further geometric because we've got these diagonal lines formed by the vines or branches kind of meeting at the junctures. Just thought it was an exceptional looking rug. Let's see what else we have. Oh, I took pictures like this too. They're not all great, but the collection was so pretty, and this was like a beautiful shell tray that had a shell inlay in it, like mother of pearl kind of thing, if you can see that kind of, and it was hand painted and old, right? This isn't like one of the early 20th century ones that are also so beautiful, but this is like a really old one with inlaid mother of pearl, and the pearl was just shining. There was tons of cut glass decanters all over the place. They had lots of parties, things like this in every chair, these beautiful pillows with cut work and velvet and different techniques. Everything was eye-catching. There were hundreds of rugs there, so it was hard to focus on taking pictures of other things. I think I showed you this the other night, but I'm not sure, and I thought it's worth showing again. Beautiful collection of amethyst glass. He also had a collection of amber glass that I'm sure I showed. And then we were going down one of the many staircases here, and it's just more stuff that had been salvaged, more walls and windows that had been salvaged from other places. Beautiful carved eagle up on the top. Suze, that did look like the devil's purse a little bit next to the vines. It did. And I'm still working on my devil's purse design. I'm so bad. But, you know, I hope that you can make it to this house at some point. Let me know if you do, because I'd love to go back too. There was so much to see. It's worth many visits. Just beautiful. Another vignette here, and I just thought this was interesting to point out. It looks a bit like that, right, curtain-wise, but these curtains are actually plaster. Like, they're not a textile. They are plaster, sculptural. And I thought, how cool is that? For the true perfectionist that cannot stand it when the wrinkle is the wrong way in the fabric, you just have it done in plaster, and it doesn't move at all. This rug was in that attic, not the attic room, this was in the last room that we were in. I think this is the rug that was used on the cover of the Joel and Kate Kopp book, right, from the 70s, I think, if not very similar. Super classic folk rug, but very simple. Very simple central motif, original design, 2 flowers, so we're not obsessing about that rule of odd numbers yet. Lynn says, I would call this rug a sampler. Absolutely. The one with all the squares, right, the alternating, absolutely could be a sampler. Let me come back to that for a second. Let's just look at that together one more time. No, even further. Hold on. I'm doing a show, honey.
There's an insane level of cuteness.
I know. There's always an insane level of cuteness. Yeah, you know, this could really be handled as a sampler. And when this person was lucky enough to be able to hook it with some consistency of color. You know, if you look at the top row, those are darker blocks in the background. Careful, I have wires here. Than the bottom ones. But that sort of yellow or tan color, like the khaki color, again, that could be kind of a uniform thing, or who knows. Could be dyed, could be onion skins. Reaction to the the plaster incredible. It was incredible. Heidi, good to see you in Belgium. Good to see you. I know, Crystal. It's just crazy. It gives you some ideas. Doing stuff with, like, you know, that cloth, like the plaster of Paris stuff that you can do paper mache stuff with. You can also do window treatments like that, as long as you never want them to move. You have to remember that they're not flexible and your hand doesn't just reach for them wildly one day and crack it. But this could well be handled as a sampler because besides being a geometric with a one-off pattern, so two patterns, it could be done in different colors, but you plan the colors out in a specific way, right? So that, for example, the outer border could all be the same blocks, but the outer border could be done, for example, in like aubergine and black, mostly. And then the border within could be done, I think mine is a little bit bigger. I think I put one more row, so it's not a square, but it's a little closer to a square. Very large rug, the one that I drew out. Your next one in could be something more like what you've done, your blacks and your aubergines. Maybe you could do like your teals and your indigo blues. You could really take it a step further as a sampler and switch out your colors for different play. I mean, it really is a rug with a lot of mileage. And because of the repeat, I'm just coming back to where we were. Because of the repeat, it has a lot of flexibility. Classic rug, classic design, very simple central motif, hit or miss just in that shadow behind the two flower medallion. And, you know, weirdly, I never think to do this when I'm designing, but if you're going to do something, a circle like this, my first thought would be circles are tricky, right? Maybe this comes from being a quilter first. Circles are tricky, but if you're doing a circle that you're handling like a hit or miss, you're not going to have any trouble. Because if there's a problem with consistency, a problem with shape, your shape getting a little wonky or irregular, because it's a hit or miss, it's not really going to matter. Now, if this were done in solids, I think it would be a lot more fussy, right? If it wasn't absolute perfection, your eye could look at it and go wonky. But because it's a hit or miss, you get like a get out of jail free card along with it. And as long as you keep those swirls going in different colors, even if it's not perfection, nobody is going to know. I really like this big disc border on this thing. Very simple central floral. I would have put a third flower in for sure. And if I were to do this pattern, I would still do that. Also, it would be great with a bird's nest in the center. But I like how fine and filigree the corners are, right? Aren't they lovely? They're so, compared to that big heavy plate in the center, like a big charger with a couple of little flowers on it, all these delicate little flowers around the edges, like super happy fine springtime. It's another rug full of contrast for me. Very unusual color palette. Neutrals, black, gray, tons of them, tan, and then a little bit into very unusual colors for an antique rug, a true teal and coral. And that's about it. Your browns, but a brown is still a neutral, right? Like most browns are neutrals unless they have a real zing to them. So mostly neutrals and very grayscale with just the introduction of 2 or 3 other shades. And I mean, unusual, just unusual. A lot of heaviness in the center and then a lot of lightness on the corners, almost a braided circular border idea. Yeah, Karen, it is. It gives that feeling of like a trompe-l'oeil rug. You're absolutely right. I didn't even think of that. It looks like a braided rug, doesn't it? If there was no, you know, many of the early hooked rugs have braided borders. We see that sometimes when we run the show. Many rings of braids around a central hooked piece. That is a nice thing to find. Sometimes one of the things that you see is what's called like the German carpet. That's like a Victorian term. You really don't see that in contemporary rugs. You see that in rugs from like the 1880s, 1890s, where they have actually cut a piece of rug that they got from a mill. So not a homemade rug, right? So they would cut a piece that was left out of a rug that may otherwise have had problems or damage, and they would keep that segment because even a part of it is valuable, however big it could be. Oh, I used to have one hanging right there. I must have taken it to the studio. And then go rings around it with the braiding so that it would become a much larger carpet. But just an example of trying to save as much as you could of a rug that was a commercial rug of the day, because it would have been very expensive and valuable. You'd want people to know you once had it, even if you had destroyed it in the meantime. So let me show you a couple more of this, and then I'm going to conclude pretty quickly. This is the back of it. And again, David Sleeper's rooms were quite dim. And a lot of the rooms that look like they have window light are not window light. It's light coming from the ceiling and reflecting off a mirror to create these great displays of glass. It gives a lot of light to the room, but not natural direct sunlight. And for that reason, with so many rugs littered around the place, litter is the wrong word, of course, they saved their colors. Their colors were not struck by the sun and faded. So he did a great service. He was very, very cognizant of what needed to happen to preserve all of the collections that he had. And he understood how textiles worked. And he was very careful. Nice close-up of the rings around this rug. It is so different. I didn't realize it was textured. I think I did when I was standing there, but I have since forgotten. There are some patterned wools that create this beautiful texture, these colorful patterns. The one is like a black, blue, yellow, it looks like in between. And you can see the rings are not perfection by any means, but they are beautiful. I think this must be a new tape binding on it. But it's not a new rug. Otherwise, it would have had a special sticker on it. Now, we're heading out of the building now and to the end of the episode and the end of the tour at the same time. But I have to say to you, this is a remember when. Do you remember on our 4th of July episode, we were looking at different motifs in rug hooking? We had our Canada Day on Friday, and then the following, I think Monday, was the 4th of July for us in the U.S. We were looking at classic motifs that have been very popular in rug making. And the subject came up, trees, and particularly I was talking about a flag, right, because we were on our flag segment, looking at the different designs of flags over the years that people have frequently hooked. And I was talking about the pine tree flag. That was one of the early flags in America. And in that episode, I could not find anywhere on the internet an example of the pine tree flag to show you. And guess what? When I walked into this room, I didn't notice it the other times I went because I wasn't looking for it. Walked down these little stairs into this very odd room with a library on the second floor, and I looked at that thing and I almost tripped down the stairs because I went, oh my God, is that an original pine tree flag? And yes, it was. I was like a zombie. It was like apocalypse walking toward it, right? I got right under it and oops, wait a minute. I got a little closer and I went, 1776. That is a pine tree flag. And I remembered from our commentary that day, I remember I had just collected the commentary, but I said, you know, this is one of the earliest proposals for our national flag. This was popular in certain parts of the country, and it had this beautiful text on it, "We appeal to heaven." So this was one of the flags right around the time of the revolution, right after the revolution, right when we are becoming a country. And we're looking for the right motifs to sort of institute for all of time. This was one of the ones, obviously, that wasn't chosen. This is not the national flag. But I thought it was extraordinary that there was a pine tree flag in this house. Not surprised, but I thought it was extraordinary. And I thought, what a perfect thing, because it really tied into that July 4th episode. From that room, we immediately exited out into the back where we saw the inlet here, the harbor. And God, it's just a beautiful part of the country. The house is right on the water. That was a cute little squirrel, right? He had such odd things, again, that had been taken from collections of houses all over the place. When I turned and looked back at the house, I was looking at the back facade of it. Sorry about that. And you can see all the different windows, these kind of peeky peek moments where there's faux shutters, and he's got carved gargoyles and Elizabethan heads in there. Things that are plaster, things that are wood, all old things, right? So maybe not plaster, but you know what I mean, stone, just beautiful. Even the collection of chimneys were very different, all these working chimneys back in the day, all these different kinds of windows. Look at the different designs on the windows. Every room has different panes because he's taking windows from other houses, and he's putting a patchwork of a house together. I mean, this must be one of the most extraordinary houses of all time. I don't know if you've ever been to the Winchester House in California. It has that kind of a feel, but the Winchester House has a lot more continuity to it, incredibly, than this house. This really, I love the Winchester House, but this is my all-time favorite house. It really is a patchwork. And, oh, I took a picture down of some of our group was down there that had already gone through, and they were taking photos. I took a little photo there. And then we have our group photo. Some of us gathered at the end, some of the buddies. And it was just such a great day. I wish we all could have been there together. We kind of were over 2 episodes, but it's much better in person, as you can imagine. It was such a fun day. And I have been there several times before to both of those houses. But I'll tell you, when you're walking through, it's really like it's all new again. It's seeing these things, and as we do more coffee time and cocktail time episodes, learning more, figuring out more, piecing things together more, me reading the thread too and finding things out from you, and all of us just gathering more information, more fuel, more energy, more excitement. You approach again this place that you've been several times before. You look at these rugs with new eyes and go, oh, look at that. I've seen this rug 3 or 4 times for sure. I know I photographed it 3 or 4 times on different days, but today I can see something different there. So exciting, so much fun. Doreen says, beautiful house. Yes, been to the Winchester house, another beautiful house. I used to take my tour groups back there ages ago. So much fun. And it's worth saying, no matter where you are, if there are houses near you, historic houses in any part of the country, Canada, Belgium, I don't know if Gail's on in Australia, we have friends logging on from all over the world. If you know of a house, of course it's less likely outside of North America because they tend to be, rug hooking is a sort of was a North American art that, thank God, is now finding its way to other countries, and we're finally, a proper craft, right, after all these years. If you know of places around you, historic homes or historical societies, where there are collections of rugs, even if it's just a few, please let me know, because we can start working on a master file. And if there are houses that I get to when I'm on vacation or I'm traveling here, if I drive by a house that had even like 5 beautiful hooked rugs inside of it, and I just drove by because I didn't know, that would be a travesty. So let's try to share information about which houses, which places in general are near us or that you know of that have collections of hooked rugs, or at least homemade rugs, handmade rugs, so that we can start putting a master list together. And I can't get to all of them, but maybe between us, we can start visiting different places and photographing the rugs. If you have a situation near you where you know that your local historical society or local museum or local historic house has a collection of hooked rugs, if you can go in there, like I did with this little slideshow, and take pictures of those rugs and save them, then you and I could do a video together that's recorded that I can put up on the channel so that we can all see the rugs, because I can't be there, but you were there. That's just as good. That's even better because you're a different person, more variety. So that would be amazing. If we can think about doing that, if you can cast your memory back, I just put that song in my head, to places that you've been that might have them. Let's think about that. Let's try to document it that way so we can all start nailing down places we might go on day trips, summer and fall, good day tripping times, right? To look at some of these beautiful rugs and take our own photographs of them. Something to think about. The dyeing is complete, Karen. We went the right amount of time. I'm going to start putting all my skeins, all my Briggs and Little into Synthrapol. I've got 12 colors to do right now, and I have a great vision for the new collection, the new color collection for August. The new swatch set will come out as wool pieces, wool strips, big swatches, and yarn. So I'm going to work on that this afternoon while the temperature remains in the 70s. So the chance of actually expiring and standing in front of the stove is a little bit lower today than the last few days. Have a great afternoon, everybody. I will not be on tomorrow. We don't run the show on Thursday. I'm going to do something with the kids tomorrow. Probably go to the ocean. What's that? I am ending it. You want to come in? Oh, wires here. Come here, baby. Come here. Come here, little match girl. Look at little match girl. We're going to do some showering and hair washing. We're all summery over here. So I won't see you tomorrow, but I will see you on Friday for our cocktail night. My plan is to do the Raya rug. Stop kicking the table. It's changing our view, right? She's like, don't talk to me like that on camera. So I will see you on Friday for cocktail night. That is at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll probably be back in the studio. And we will look at the history of Raya rugs and lots of examples from old catalogs and things of these beautiful high pile rugs. They are not 70s rugs. They are early 20th century rugs, but we'll look at some beauties from the 70s as well. Heidi's saying hi to you. You want to say hi to Heidi?
Hi. That one.
That's hard to say.
Heidi.
Hi, Heidi.
Hi,
You know,
Heidi.
Heidi's from Belgium, where we used to live in the Netherlands. She's one country over. She's that close to where we used to be. She sees herself on camera and she likes what she sees, but she's a pretty girl, so she deserves it. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you on Friday. For Raya Rug Night. Have a great week. If you need me or you want to send your gallery pictures to me, ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com.